We are back here on Girl Talk with our friend Barry Edwards at Island Tire. We're very excited. Actually, Deb Court's getting ready to pick up her car. She had some new brake pads installed.
Brake pads and turn the rotors and a brake flush.
So we are all your best clients because we know you do the best work. It's really exciting. It's hotter than you know what today, so we thought it'd be appropriate to talk about cooling, your cooling systems. So talk to me a little bit about why that's so important, if you will.
Sure. We've got two main cooling systems. There's the one that cools the inside, that's the air conditioning.
Okay.
A lot of people would say that's their most important. The second one is the engine cooling system, which is the radiator, water pump, some of those things, which is actually probably the most important. That's the second most common cause of major engine damage.
Oh, you're kidding.
On vehicles is a failure in the cooling system. Well, think about it. Water boils at about 212 degrees.
Okay.
An engine, when it's running, at the cylinder heads, may be upwards of 500 to 600 degrees. Actually, in the piston, it's close to 1,000.
Okay.
So that water circulates through your system, or a combination of coolant, antifreeze, and water, to help remove that heat from the engine so that it doesn't burn up.
And I know this is so silly. Part of the reason we're doing this show on Girl Talk is that we feel really strongly that I think as women, there are things I want to know that I just didn't know. And the information that you're providing me, there's nothing better than an informed consumer. I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah. With a cooling system, that's why it's important to change it about every 50,000 miles.
Oh.
Simply because just like you change the oil because it wears out, the glycol in coolant won't wear out.
Okay.
However, what will happen is you can have some of the water in the system boil off if it's running hot.
Okay.
It also has a lot of anti-corrosive chemicals in there that over a period of time, those become depleted, and then so your engine will actually begin to develop corrosion on the inside.
Oh my gosh.
So antifreeze does two things. It keeps the engine from running too hot or from freezing, but it also protects the inside of the engine from corrosion.
So every 50,000 miles, I should come in and, I mean, do I have it checked when I...
Sure. When we do an oil change, we normally will test it with a strip. We'll check how much glycol's in it, and also what is the pH of the fluid, which tells you whether or not it still has the anti-corrosion protection.
So is asked if it's acidic.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
And then one thing that's real important, different cars use different antifreezes.
Okay.
A lot of GM products, some Toyotas use what's called a Dex-Cool. It's a great coolant, but they tell you, replace it after 5 years or 100,000 miles, with one exception, as long as you use distilled water. If you add regular water to it, it will negate the organic acid technology in it, and it will literally turn into pudding.
Let me ask you this.
It makes a very unhappy engine.
All I remember is years and years ago going through the mountains in my mom and dad's car and the car overheating. I don't hear that so much now. Is that because of technology, or what are the reasons behind that?
Well, it's a combination of things. One is this right here.
Okay.
In the past, when a car would get hot, the fluid would expand and it would just go out on the ground. This is a recovery bottle. Some people call it an overflow bottle. So what happens when it runs hot? Okay. Some of the fluid will be displaced and captured in here. As the engine cools back down, it'll pull it back in to the system. So it's got room. It has room to be able to expand.
Expand and contract.
The other thing that's gotten much better is with the technology, better antifreeze in terms of using a glycol and the corrosion properties. So typically when a car would overheat, the water pump may have failed because literally it corroded from the inside out.
Okay. Where is the water pump?
The water pump on this vehicle is going to be
down in there?
Down behind, and it's driven off of this serpentine belt. That's why we talk about when you need to get your belt replaced, it drives so many things. In this particular vehicle, it turns the air conditioning compressor, the alternator, the power steering pump, and the water pump. So you've got all these things being driven by a single rubber belt or serpentine belt. You know, for a lot this time of year, we're still seeing things. You know, radiators will fail. They don't make them out of copper and brass anymore. They make them out of plastic and aluminum. Okay. And if they get hot, they're more susceptible to what we call a catastrophic failure. It literally will get so hot the plastic will melt or a seam will burst. The old the old copper and brass ones were great. You could actually solder them back together. They could be recored. but they add a lot of weight to the vehicle.
Let me ask you this from a prevention point of view.
Sure.
What can I do when it's 100 degrees out to protect this or do the best I can, again, as a consumer for my car when I'm driving it?
The main thing is preventative maintenance.
Okay.
Is make sure, if it's been a while since you've had the coolant checked, is to check it. And that doesn't mean just unscrew the cap and look at it. We don't want to open that.
Right.
This is under pressure.
Okay.
But you want to have it tested, either with a hygrometer or typically we use the test strips,
Okay.
which will tell us what's the percentage of glycol, also what is the pH. And then maintaining it is every 50,000 miles, doing a flush. When we do one of those, we literally run a cleaning agent through that removes any kind of scale, rust, contamination through the system.
Really interesting.
And then we replace all of the antifreeze with fresh antifreeze, and then we also will add a conditioner to it, which will increase the cooling capacity.
Tell me a little bit about the air conditioning system per se. Now, how does that, I know we've only got a few minutes to go, a minute or so.
You've got a compressor, and what it does, it compresses the coolant. It runs through a dryer, and then, of course, across a coil. In the process of compressing it, drying it, and then releasing that pressure, it basically becomes very cold when you pass cold air over it. That's what cools the inside. The most common problem we have is that these develop a real small leak somewhere, a fitting, something like that. And so we do what's called an evacuation and recharge. We'll actually pull it out and we add a dye. Now, when they say do an evacuation and recharge, that's rarely a permanent fix.
Okay.
In some cases, it'll be good for, maybe good for 6 months.
Okay.
It may be good for 3 years. But normally when we do one, we ask folks to bring the car back in about 2 weeks later, and we can check it with using, looks like a forensic crime scene with glasses and an ultraviolet light.
Who knew this would be so interesting? And again, if we only wet your whistle or teased you to learn more, please come in. Vince is here, Barry's here, we've got great guys here. And again, we're at the north end of the island, whether you go north or south. The staff here really know what they're talking about. And as always, it's a treat to see you, to talk with you, and to learn something again. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Girl Talk is brought to you by J. Banks Design, The Greenery, Stoneworks, Custom Audio Video, and by Island Tire and Automotive Services. Please support these businesses who make our program possible.